If you have ADHD, you've probably spent years wondering why motivation feels so unreliable. You might feel highly motivated one moment and completely stuck the next. People may tell you to just try harder, build discipline, or find motivation, but none of that seems to work consistently. This leads many people to believe they're lazy, broken, or incapable of sustained effort. In reality, ADHD motivation doesn't work the way most advice assumes it does. It's not missing, it's just driven by different forces. For ADHD brains, action is not driven primarily by motivation. It's driven by interest, urgency, novelty, or emotional intensity. Motivation, as it's commonly described, is actually one of the weakest drivers for ADHD. Understanding this difference can completely change how you approach work, goals, and self-trust. Let's start by clarifying what people usually mean by motivation. Motivation is often framed as a steady internal drive that allows someone to start tasks, persist through boredom, and follow through regardless of mood or interest. This kind of motivation is closely tied to consistent dopamine regulation. ADHD brains don't regulate dopamine this way. Dopamine levels fluctuate more, which means motivation fluctuates too. Waiting for stable motivation is like waiting for perfect weather. It may come occasionally, but you can't build a life around it. This is why ADHD motivation feels unreliable. It's not because you don't care, it's because caring isn't enough to trigger action. ADHD brains need a stronger signal to engage. That signal often comes in the form of interest. Interest is one of the most powerful drivers for ADHD. When something is interesting, engaging, or meaningful, focus can appear almost effortlessly. Time fades. Distractions drop away. This is often called hyperfocus, but it's better understood as interest-based attention. Interest boosts dopamine naturally, which activates executive function. This is why you can work for hours on something you love and struggle for minutes on something boring. The problem is that interest is unpredictable. You can't force yourself to be interested. An interest doesn't always align with responsibilities. This creates frustration and shame. You might think, if I can focus on this, why can't I focus on that? The answer isn't character, it's chemistry. Because interest is unreliable, many ADHD adults end up relying on urgency instead. Urgency creates a spike of stimulation through stress. Deadlines, fear of consequences, or last-minute panic flood the system with adrenaline and dopamine. This temporarily boosts focus and energy. Urgency works, but at a cost. Urgency-based motivation is not sustainable. It trains the nervous system to associate action with threat. Over time, this increases anxiety, avoidance, and burnout. The brain becomes exhausted by constant pressure. Eventually, urgency stops working. Deadlines no longer activate focus, they trigger shutdown. When this happens, people often panic, believing they've lost motivation entirely. What's actually happening is nervous system fatigue. The system can't keep running on adrenaline. This is why ADHD motivation often seems to disappear later in life. It's not gone, it's burned out. Understanding the difference between motivation, interest, and urgency explains why traditional advice fails. Most productivity advice assumes motivation is stable and discipline fills the gaps. ADHD brains don't work that way. Discipline without dopamine feels like pushing a car without fuel. You can move it briefly, but it's exhausting. Another key difference is emotional intensity. ADHD brains respond strongly to emotion. When something feels exciting, meaningful, or emotionally charged, action becomes easier. When something feels neutral or boring, engagement drops. This isn't immaturity. It's neurological sensitivity. Emotional intensity acts like fuel. This is why gamification, novelty, and meaning help ADHD brains so much. They add emotional or sensory stimulation, increasing dopamine. Without these elements, tasks feel flat and heavy. Trying to push through that flatness with willpower increases strain. Many people misunderstand this and try to shame themselves into motivation. They think, if I cared enough, I'd do it. But caring doesn't create dopamine. Shame actually reduces dopamine and increases threat. This makes motivation worse, not better. Over time, shame creates avoidance and self-doubt. Another important distinction is between wanting and being able to act. You can deeply want something and still feel unable to move toward it. This disconnect is one of the most painful ADHD experiences. It leads people to question their desires, goals, and identity. Understanding that wanting and acting are mediated by different brain systems brings relief. Motivation advice also fails because it ignores timing. ADHD motivation comes in waves. Trying to work against those waves increases resistance. Learning to notice when interest or energy is available, and using that window is more effective than forcing effort at low points. This doesn't mean waiting forever. It means designing systems that make use of interest when it appears and reduce damage when it doesn't. ADHD-friendly systems don't assume constant motivation. They assume variability. One of the most helpful shifts is moving away from motivation as the goal and toward engagement as the goal. Engagement can happen even when motivation is low if the task is made accessible enough. This might mean lowering the bar, reducing friction, or making the task emotionally safer. Another key concept is activation energy. ADHD brains require higher activation energy to start tasks. Interest and urgency lower activation energy quickly. Calm tasks require external support to lower that threshold. When activation energy is too high, the task feels impossible. This is why starting is often harder than continuing. Once you're engaged, momentum builds. Motivation often follows action, not the other way around. Waiting to feel motivated before starting keeps you stuck. It's also important to understand that motivation isn't a personality trait. It's a state. States change. When you judge yourself for a state, you create unnecessary suffering. Learning to work with states instead of against them improves long-term functioning. Another trap is comparing your motivation to others. Neurotypical motivation often looks steady and self-directed. ADHD motivation is reactive and context-dependent. Comparing the two leads to shame. Different brains, different systems. Rebuilding a healthy relationship with motivation involves letting go of moral judgments. Low motivation doesn't mean laziness. High motivation doesn't mean superiority. These are states influenced by biology, environment, and emotional load. One of the most powerful strategies is designing tasks to be more interesting or emotionally engaging. This doesn't mean turning everything into entertainment. It means adding meaning, novelty, or reward where possible. Even small changes can make a big difference. Another strategy is reducing reliance on urgency by building alternative drivers. Clear structure, predictable routines, body doubling, and visual progress cues all support engagement without panic. These tools lower activation energy and reduce emotional resistance. It's also crucial to build recovery into your system. Motivation drops when recovery is insufficient. Rest isn't laziness, it's fuel. ADHD motivation improves when the nervous system feels safe and rested. Understanding motivation this way changes how you talk to yourself. Instead of saying, "What's wrong with me?" you can ask, "What's missing right now?" That question leads to solutions instead of shame. Over time, as you reduce shame and urgency, motivation becomes quieter but more reliable. You may not feel dramatic bursts of energy, but you'll experience steadier engagement. This is sustainable motivation, not flashy, but real. Inside Dopaloop Pro, we teach this framework because it removes so much self-blame. When you understand how motivation actually works for ADHD brains, you stop fighting yourself and start designing systems that fit. If you want ADHD-friendly support that helps you engage without pressure or panic, you'll find the link in the description.